Have you ever had unwanted thoughts that just will not go away? Or maybe you felt this absolute, overwhelming urge to repeat an action over and over, even when you literally, truly didn't want to? It's a completely exhausting experience. And if you're nodding along right now, I want you to know right off the bat, you are absolutely not alone. We're kicking off this explainer with that deeply relatable question, because it really sets the stage for a condition that is vastly misunderstood today.
Welcome to Breaking the Cycle, a comprehensive guide to OCD awareness. Today, we're breaking down obsessive-compulsive disorder, and our main goal, to recognize OCD for what it actually is, a genuine, highly distressing mental health condition. We've all heard someone say, "Oh, I'm so OCD about my desk," right? But true OCD is not just a quirky desire to be neat or a love for perfectionism. It's a very complex condition. To put it in perspective, the World Health Organization has previously ranked it among the top 10 most disabling illnesses globally when it comes to lost income and decreased quality of life. Understanding it correctly is step one toward compassion and ultimately recovery. So here's our game plan for today. 1. What is OCD? 2. Common symptoms and presentations. 3. Crossing into a disorder. 4. Effective treatment options. 5. Prognosis and recovery path. And finally 6. Busting common OCD myths.
Let's jump right in. Section 1. What is OCD? To get this right, we really need to break down the two main components, starting with the obsession. An obsession is an intrusive, incredibly unwanted thought that causes a massive spike in anxiety or distress. Think of it like your brain suddenly pulling a giant fire alarm when there isn't actually a fire. We're not talking about normal, everyday worrying, like stressing over an upcoming exam or a tight budget. This is a thought that entirely invades the mind against the person's will, triggering intense emotional pain and genuine, visceral fear. And that brings us to the other half of the equation. If the obsession is that terrifying false fire alarm, the compulsion is the frantic scramble to somehow turn it off. A compulsion is a repetitive action, or even a mental ritual, performed specifically to alleviate the distress caused by that initial obsession. It's really just a desperate attempt to find some temporary relief from that unbearable anxiety. When you put those together, you get the relentless engine of OCD, a brutal four-step cycle. Step 1, the intrusive thought hits. Step 2, immediate severe anxiety takes over. Step 3, the person performs a compulsion to cope. And Step 4, they get some temporary relief. But notice I said temporary. That relief, it never lasts. The cycle inevitably loops right back around, trapping the person in this continuous, exhausting hamster wheel that feels totally impossible to escape.
Section 2. Common symptoms and presentations. Now, how does this actually look in the real world? Basically, the brain creates a specific fear and then demands a specific ritual to soothe it. For instance, if the obsession is an intense fear of contamination, the compulsion is usually excessive washing or cleaning. If the obsession is about symmetry, things just needing to feel exactly right, the compulsion becomes counting or meticulously arranging items until that perfect feeling hits. And if someone is plagued by deeply disturbing, intrusive thoughts, their compulsion might be constantly seeking reassurance from loved ones. The distressing internal thought is directly linked to the external behavior used to cope with it.
But here's a super important point. Compulsions can be visible behaviors, sure, but they can also be completely invisible mental rituals. Not all compulsions are things you can easily see, like washing hands or checking door locks. So many people suffer silently through mental rituals that no one else even knows are happening. They might be mentally replaying past events, silently repeating specific phrases over and over, or counting in their head just to neutralize a bad thought. Just because you can't physically see the compulsion doesn't mean that person isn't trapped in the cycle.
Section 3. Crossing into a disorder.
So where is the line? Because let's be honest, everyone occasionally has a weird thought or double-checks a lock. But everyday habits cross into a clinical disorder when those symptoms become incredibly difficult to control and severely time-consuming. In fact, for a clinical diagnosis, professionals often look at whether these cycles consume more than an hour of a person's day. That's a lot of lost time. If it's causing severe distress and actively getting in the way of a person's ability to maintain relationships, succeed in school, or just hold down a job, we're talking about a clinically significant disorder.
Section 4. Effective treatment options. Okay, let's pivot to the good news because there is a lot of it. Powerful, evidence-based solutions actually exist. The gold standard here is a specialized form of cognitive behavior therapy called exposure and response prevention, or ERP. Basically, this involves gradually facing that anxiety-provoking thought, that's the exposure, while actively resisting the urge to do the neutralizing compulsion, that's the response prevention.
Alongside this therapy, psychiatrists will often prescribe SSRIs or other medications, which can be incredibly effective. And honestly, for a lot of people, hitting it from both angles, with a combination of psychological and pharmacological treatments, yields the absolute best results. I do want to throw in a quick word of caution, though. While ERP is incredibly successful, it is absolutely crucial that you do not attempt difficult exposures on your own without professional guidance. Facing your deepest fears is a really delicate clinical process. If you try it without training, you might accidentally flood yourself with way too much anxiety, which can actually backfire and reinforce the cycle. Always, always seek out a mental health professional who is specifically trained in ERP to guide you safely through it.
Section 5. Prognosis and Recovery Paths.
So, what does the future look like? The biggest takeaway here is that OCD is highly, highly treatable. Now, recovery is rarely a perfectly straight line. It's totally normal for symptoms to naturally fluctuate. They might spike during times of high life stress, for example. And yes, some individuals may need longer-term specialist care to keep things managed. But many, many people who undergo evidence-based treatment experience a massive, life-changing improvement. Profound recovery is absolutely the norm when you get the right help.
Section 6. Busting Common OCD Myths. Let's wrap up by shattering some of those harmful pop culture stereotypes we talked about earlier. Myth. OCD just means you like being exceptionally clean. Fact. No, it's a severe, complex mental health disorder. Myth. People with OCD somehow want or secretly enjoy these intrusive thoughts. Fact. By definition, the thoughts are incredibly unwanted and cause deep, deep emotional pain. Myth. If someone has a disturbing thought, they're going to act on it. Fact. The thoughts cause such intense distress precisely because the person is terrified of them and would absolutely never act on them. And finally, the myth that it can't be treated? Totally false. As we just saw, it is a highly treatable condition.
I really want to leave you with this. OCD is not a choice, and your intrusive thoughts do not define you as a person. An intrusive thought says literally nothing about your character, your morals, or who you are. It's just a misfiring in the brain. That's it. With the appropriate treatment and support, a beautiful, fully recovered life is completely within reach.
Just as a quick reminder, this explainer is strictly for mental health education and awareness. It's not a substitute for professional assessment, diagnosis, or treatment. If any of this resonates with you, or maybe someone you love, please seek out a qualified professional for true assessment and care. I'll leave you with this final thought. If we as a society stop using OCD as a punchline for just being organized, how many silently suffering people might finally feel safe enough to ask for the exact help they deserve? Thanks so much for learning with me today.